Transportation Committee for Monday, April 9th, 2018 to order. And normally we would approve the agenda and the minutes, but we're lacking a few folks tonight, so we don't have quorum. And the plan is that we will go ahead and listen to all the business items and then advance them to the full council on, I don't think we have any same week, so April 25th. For considerations and without a recommendation from the Transportation Committee. So with that, we can move on to MTS Director Thompson's report.
Madam Chair and members, I have a very short report today in light of the fact that I've been off on vacation, and the legislature, who's been keeping MTS busy, has also been off last week. So my only report is that the legislature is back and that we'll be having several hearings this week. One, and we continue to move the bill continues to move related to the Metro Mobility Task Force recommendation of data sharing with Department of Human Services. And so that is one item that is on the agenda at the legislature again this week. And other than that, we have some items on the agenda tonight, but that's all I have to report tonight.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members? If not, General Manager Lamb.
Yes, Madam Chair, members, you can tell from my slightly longer notes that I wasn't on vacation this night. But first of all, this week marks National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And what is that? We have over 30 telecommunicators and Metro Transit who have dedicated themselves to being the link between callers who may need emergency assistance and emergency responders. So kind of the people in the control center and who act as the conduit to emergency services. In 2017 alone, they handled more than 65,000 calls to help our operators, riders, and the communities we serve. Those included routine calls generated by bus operators, our rail control center, riders, community members, or self-generated calls by our Metro Transit police officers. There might be an emergency where our telecommunicators are the only calming voice needed in that moment, but sometimes they need to activate emergency services. Our telecommunicators will be recognized by their managers and supervisors on Thursday, but this is a good week to reminder next time you come across a telecommunicator to remember the vital link that they represent to our entire organization and the riders throughout the year. We all have seen the great job that Metro light rail operators do for millions of riders every year, and sometimes under challenging conditions. Well, on an annual basis, we get a chance to see those operators compete to see who is the best of the best during the Rail Rodeo competition. This year, the competition will be on April 21st, starting at 8 a.m. Judges observe operators in out-of-service trains and competing tasks in the rail yard. Operators will be judged during a uniform inspection, written exam, and vehicle inspections. The winners of the Metro Transit Rail Rodeo then eligible to compete at the International Rail Rodeo hosted by the APTA Association. If any council members would like to see parts of the competition, let me know, and we'll make sure we can make those arrangements. And finally, I want to cue up a video. As you know, recently at the Metro Transit Police Department award ceremony, we heard about some of the great work done by our Metro Transit officers. But I also want to highlight that this year's Metro Transit's Office of the Year is a perfect example of what it means to not only be there every day, but to surround your kind of free time in terms of community building. And I think you'll see that. In his off-duty hours, he's a football coach at North High. And so I think you'll be able to kind of appreciate how he puts that community building to work on a daily basis. So without further ado, Officer Tim Lawrence.
Growing up, I was always the biggest kid and kind of protecting the little kids, and just kind of my instinct. So she just took one class at Emory Hills and I aced the class, and I'm like, yeah, this is the right thing for me. Definitely an eye-opener when I came in to work the inner city, stuff like that, but I absolutely love it.
She's clear, sir.
Thank you. A lot of it's education, swearing, cussing, singing, you know, and just show them like, hey, no, people want to come through here, be left alone, get on their buses and move on with their day. Like I said, a lot of times we don't want to make people criminals, but we have to somehow get them to realize, like, stop doing what they're doing. Learning what I've learned as a coach, I definitely bring it into policing, because sometimes when you're communicating with people, just to kind of learn the different communities, how you have to interact with people for them to respect you. I'm so thankful I'm able to do this, and I hope to be able to do it for a long time. A lot of times people are like, why are you here? What are you doing? What are you going to do to me? You know, it gets disheartening at times, but that's my mentality in policing and just everything. It's treat everybody how you want to be treated. You know, I feel it's gotten me far in my career. You go and you treat somebody like a human being. You treat them like you want to be treated. I'm truly sincere at what I do. Even the bad guys, they're like, man, you know, you're the real deal. You actually care. You care what you're doing. And it's like, yeah, I do. Even though we have such a huge jurisdiction, it's still, this is my area. You know, the buses, the trains, the bus stops, you know, the different shelters. You know, I take pride in that.
And now, Madam Chair, ends General Manager's report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? It was a very nice award ceremony.
I guess it doesn't end the General Manager's report.
We know that you know how important it is to operate your bus safely at all times. But winter puts special demands on you, so you can't drive.
There we go.
That ends the General Manager's report.
All right, next up, our consent item was 2018-69. It was it's an annual authorization to apply for 5311 for non-urbanized area formula program funds. And Director Thompson can give us a brief summary.
Madam Chair, members, I can speak to this. This is a routine action item that we each year apply for funds from MnDOT for the non-urbanized area. We'll be applying again this year. We're anticipating receiving about $1.26 million. That's what we budgeted for, but the final number will be award after we receive the award. We use this for transit link operations in our non-urbanized area, and that represents roughly 20% of the transit link budget. So this allows us to apply for that, and per MnDOT requirements, it will have a resolution from the council attached to our application. So this action, when approved by full council, would have that resolution attached with it. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Next up is 2018-86. It's the agency contract for 2018-2023. And we have several requests for folks to speak. And I know Director Thompson also wanted to give a little bit of background information. So we'll have Director Thompson make remarks, and then I'll call up the speakers, and it'll be 3 minutes each, and then we can have Christine finally make her presentation. Director Thompson.
Madam Chair, members, in MTS each year, we run the contracted transit services, and when we issue a contract for transit services, be it fixed route or Metro Mobility, we competitively bid those contracts, and they typically last every 5 to 6 years, or 5 to 6 years in length. The process that we follow follows federal and state laws, and also council policy for procurement of services. Tonight, you will hear the results of most recent one of our contracts for Metro Mobility, and the process that we followed that included member expert panels and from both Met Council staff and also from partners that were part of the panel of selecting it. So you'll hear the results of that, but this is one of a couple per year contracts that we do through our competitive process, and this again followed the process of state and federal law and council policy and the recommendation you will hear tonight. In addition to Christine presenting, Jody Jacoby from our procurement office is here if there's any questions around the general procurement policies.
Okay, and first is Paul Slattery and from the Teamsters. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. It's always nervous for the guy who has to go first. So, the uh, the thing that I want to talk about is when we learned that when the Teamsters Local 120 learned that the bid for the agency contract was going to be awarded to transit team, we realized that this would result in a loss of nearly 100 Teamster jobs. And that really concerned us. These drivers have years of experience in handling our most vulnerable adults. I mean, they've had the contract for I think around 10 years, and driver retention is the number one issue when it comes to serving this population. So it's a population, as you know, of vulnerable adults. Uh, they do not like a lot of change. So when they have a driver, they want to see that same driver every day. It's also commonly referred to as driver continuity. This is something that's very important in this population. With the change in the contract, we believe is going to come with the change of drivers and also less experienced drivers as well. So what we're looking at is um, transit team. I mean, are they willing to commit to retaining these professional, experienced drivers, offering them jobs and honoring their union contract? Is there any plan in place to reduce driver pay and benefits, putting our most vulnerable adults at risk? So, is there any plan in place going forward to retain these drivers who have the relationship with the clients, as well as the clients' families, and as well as the agencies themselves, as to not have a big disruption amongst this community? Um, we are here today, I mean, not only to protect our members and their wages and benefit package that they enjoy, but also the safety and treatment of one of our most vulnerable adult populations. We view any move forward with this agenda item as a layoff of our drivers because there's no guarantees what's going to happen to these drivers who currently have the relationship with the vulnerable adults. With that, I'll just open myself up to see if you all have any questions of me.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee members?
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
thank you. Next up is Bill, and you introduced yourself, Weddebrand?
Pretty good.
From the Teamsters.
I thank you for your time. I'm Bill Wiedebrand, Secretary and Treasurer of Teamsters Local 120. I personally have negotiated contracts for our members with First Transit. Teamsters Local 120 has approximately 850 First Transit employees. I deal with these employees, our members, on a daily basis. These people do this job for a reason. They're not getting rich on this job. They're doing it for the passion, desire of the people that they service. They're vulnerable adults. The questions that I would have for the Met Council is if this gets awarded to transit team, if transit team will acknowledge our contract that we have negotiated for our members. This is approximately 100, I got 90 to 100 members. We just found out about this today from Paul, found it on the internet, what's going on here. And if so, and I read through what we have here, and it says that for transit team has a driver wage progression. Well, you know what? That's wonderful, and I appreciate that. But our drivers here start at $16 an hour, which I'm assuming is the wage rate going to be. But they're not the ones all losing the jobs. The ones looking to lose the jobs are the $22 an hour people. We are asking through the Met Council that our members all, if transit team gets it, that transit team has to acknowledge our contract, and if not, we get some kind of neutrality agreement or something like that, and that our members all get job offers at First Transit, a transit team, at the wage rate where they are. We're very protective of our people. They work hard, and they do it for the right reasons. With that, I thank you for your time. If there's any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members or comments? Thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming. Next up is Tim Ogren from First Transit.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Thank you for your time this afternoon. My name is Tim Ogren, and with First Transit, I'm General Manager for our agency contract. I'm very proud of our past 15 years of serving the Metro Mobility Agency. Of course, I am disappointed that it appears we will no longer serve these agencies and the riders who have come to know how much our drivers personally care about them. I'm surprised that First Transit was not scored in the technical elements as the top provider. Consider these factors. We currently operate our routes at 99% on time. In fact, that's 99.6% on time. This performance leads the industry in on-time performance. No other provider has this stellar operating performance. Our care for Met Council vehicles is also highly effective. In fact, the DOT and State Patrol use First Transit Shop as their training center for other providers due to our superior best practices. No other provider has a stellar operating performance and safety vehicle record. Our longtime agency manager has the confidence of the agencies we serve and is greatly appreciated for his excellent customer service and the care he has for the riders, our drivers, and agency staff. His dedication and understanding is unparalleled. Lastly, there seems to be a disconnect in the total cost. First Transit understands what it takes to operate this service. We are questioning how another provider can do this work for $4 million less than the bid we submitted. Perhaps with the information provided, the driver deadhead costs were not accurately attributed in the analysis. The ridership information given by the council was not specific and only had zip codes to use to determine deadhead costs and hours. It would be good to further explore this area of concern. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from committee members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the final speaker is Michael Richter from Transit Team.
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for having me here today. I just want to respond to some of those, some of the comments. First of all, thank you. This agency contract is something that's been on Transit Team's radar for over 5 years. We actually operated the contract prior to First Transit operating it, and it's been a goal of ours to reobtain that contract for quite some time. To Tim's point, we have done significant amounts of analysis as far as our costs. As far as the cost structure for providing the service, we thought there was ample information provided by the council for the bid process that allowed us to understand the true cost of the service. And the cost that we bid is one that is responsible and one that's going to allow us to provide the service and support the riders of the agency service. This is a new contract. It's not the existing agency contract. This is a contract that has been modified and adjusted to the scope of the ADA service area. We currently provide service to almost 20% of the riders on that new agency contract. We've done that with very similar performance statistics as Tim mentioned, 99+% on time, over 93% on time for appointment times. So our performance is also excellent. As far as the retention and hiring of First Transit drivers, that it was and is our intention. We want to hire and retain as many of those qualified drivers as possible. As we have done in the past with other transitions of work, we will interview every one of the drivers, discuss hours, shifts, roles that work within the new contract. As we have done with previous contracts as well, we transition them in at their current rate, and then they become a Transit Team employee with that seniority going forward and work forward with our compensation and merit increases. Which are well above those of the Teamster Union. We have compensation increases that are $1 per hour for every year of service, and the kind of threshold to obtain that type of increase in a lot of cases is showing up, doing the job, and being safe while doing the job. Currently, our highest compensated driver is making over $31 So there is no, from our perspective, there is no kind of uncertainty as far as our ability to retain and bring in some of those qualified drivers to make sure that the transition is as smooth as possible. Council. Thank you. Any questions?
Are there questions from committee members? No. Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, Christine and Jody.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having me. So the last time I was in front of this committee on this topic of the agency contract was in October of last year, where I presented an information item that talked about, gave an overview of our agency service and gave you some insight on some program examinations we were undertaking to define our next scope of services for the next contract. So I'm here today to present that business item to authorize the next contract, business item 2018-86, asking that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a contract with Transit Team to provide the Metro Mobility Agency service from October 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2023, with an option for an additional year in an amount not to exceed $31,819,812.80. So, Metro Mobility Agency service provides rides to a defined set of day training and habilitation services and adult day programs on weekdays during typical business hours. The service model had been in place with minimal changes for over 20 years. The current contract expires September 30th, 2018, and with the next contract, Metro Mobility has restructured the scope of services to more efficiently meet an increased demand for trips that begin and end within the ADA service area and for trips that serve the largest of these agencies. The ADA service area is the area within 3/4 miles of all local regular fixed routes. Metro Mobility service area with ADA service area footprint is on a map on page 2, and I'd like you to refer to that now. I think because I was here last October and talked about some of the structure changes for this contract, it was important for me to include a map. So the current contract serves over 20 adult day training habilitation centers and adult day activity centers in both the ADA and the non-ADA service areas. However, since 2013, in particular due to constraints caused by system growth, the FTA has identified a need for us to prioritize our ADA service over our non-ADA rides. One example of this is in 2016 when we began limiting non-ADA standing orders and also had to begin denying non-ADA rides. This was in order to protect the service quality requirements mandated by federal law for the ADA defined service area. The agency contract, by contrast, has been structured to serve all riders with standing orders. And as I mentioned, the current contract provides service to agencies in both the ADA and non-ADA service area. In effect, this offers all agency customers in the non-ADA area a guarantee of service that does not exist on the demand system, which goes against the mandate to prioritize ADA services. Also in 2017, we received information from the FTA that the rides delivered within the agency contract were to be classified as non-ADA due to the way the service has been structured. So primarily due to these federal requirements, we've restructured the scope of the work in the new contract to include only those agencies that are within the ADA service area. And we also took the opportunity to analyze our trip volumes to all agencies served in our entire system and have removed some smaller agencies from the scope of work for the purposes of service efficiencies. We've also added 3 large agencies that are within our ADA area that had not been part of the previous scope. It was important for us to do this analysis to try and keep the volumes of work roughly equal to the old contract, but still serving the largest of agencies that are within our ADA service footprint. So the map, the green dots represent agencies that will be served in the new contract, and the red are those that are currently identified to be served within the Metro Mobility demand system come October. However, it's important to note that all customers will continue to ride on Metro Mobility. It's just a matter of whether they are riding on the demand service or the agency service. Individual standing orders will also be grandfathered in. We've also included language in the contract that allows the council to vary the locations served during the contract term, allowing us maximum flexibility to appropriately serve agency needs as circumstances arise. We have provided information on the change to all of the agencies affected and held meetings in November and December of last year, and plan to meet again several times over the course of the summer and fall, working closely with the provider and all affected agencies on a robust transition plan. So as far as the rationale, back to the business item, the rationale for the decision. A request for proposals to the agency contract was advertised and posted on the council website. 3 proposals were received and evaluated by a 5-member panel consisting of staff from Metro Mobility, Metro Transit, Dakota County, Minnesota Department of Transportation, and Minnesota Council on Disabilities. The panel evaluated and ranked all technical proposals based on the following criteria: size and scope of providing similar transportation services, the qualifications of the proposers, including general qualifications, specialized qualifications and professional competence in areas directly related to the RFP, and the quality of the proposal, including its completeness in addressing the requirements of the RFP and scope of work, the work plan submitted as a part of the proposal, and a demonstrated grasp of the work required for the project. The panel then evaluated the financial submittals and cost proposals. Transit team had the highest rated financial submittals, the highest rated technical proposal, and the lowest proposed cost. The proposed pricing is within the budget and appears to be fair and reasonable for the 5-year contract term. Additionally, Transit team's proposal demonstrated a strong approach to customer service in a paratransit environment, as well as a continual driver wage progression plan that will retain a qualified workforce through the term of the contract. And as a reminder, in October 2016, the council did authorize increased drivers' wages of $2 an hour across all providers. Transit team has also proposed, and Mike spoke to this as well, to recruit as many drivers as possible from the incumbent by offering the same rate of pay from their current employer, as well as honoring each employee's seniority, allowing any employees who choose to work at Transit team in the new contract the ability to retain their years of service through the incumbent provider. For a Thrive lens analysis, the agency service supports the outcomes and principles of Thrive MSP 2040 by increasing efficiency, promoting equity in public transportation, and by improving customer service. There is funding in the 2018 operating budget, and there's no known opposition at this time. That's all I have. Ready for questions?
Are there questions for Christine? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 2 questions. The first one, I just want to confirm for the demand service, we'll continue to have the 2 providers or 2 contracted providers, which are First Transit and Transit Team.
Correct. This is solely for the agency contract.
Correct. All right. Then the question I had from you said you had some conversations with the different agencies. What kind of feedback did you get from them, or any concerns or issues that they voiced?
The concerns were mostly around transition and how to make sure that the customers who do really need consistency in how their transportation is provided, get the appropriate information, their caregivers give the appropriate information, and so it's as seamless as possible. So we'll be meeting in person and having conversations one by one with the individuals affected.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple questions. The minimum wage was $16 that was in the bid requirements?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then also, if one of the bidders wanted to protest, is there a formal protest process?
I'll
Can
leave
you
it
talk
to
about that a little bit?
Madam Chair, the formal protest process was outlined in the request for proposal documents, and they need to file their protest within 5 working days of council action.
Okay, very good. So there is a process, though.
Mm-hmm. And Madam Chair, just to mention that we at the council have a strong presence in debriefing vendors to help them have a better rationale for understanding why their bid or their proposal wasn't successful. We encourage them to come in and we will review their proposal with them and show them areas where they didn't score as strong, and then also look at the winning proposal and find out what they did do to receive their recommendation for award. That's standard practice, and after the contract is issued, we welcome them to come in and get more information.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from committee members? I just have one comment. I do think it's really important to have that driver continuity, and I was really encouraged to hear that when we've had transitions in the past, that there's every effort to hire the current drivers and bring them on to the new providers. But I don't know how to get around this without competitively procuring these in a reasonable time frame without having, when we did it the last time, we had some, you had to change some drivers. So I don't see a way around that problem. So
If I could add to the note on the transition as well, Madam Chair, there are 3 agencies that we're adding to this agency contract that are currently being served in the demand contract by transit team. So for those customers, they will be transit team drivers, and there would have been a transition had we selected First Transit as the provider.
very good. Thank you. All right. So because this is time sensitive, the plan is just to move it to the full council without a recommendation. And if we don't have any other questions, then we can move on to the next business
Will
item.
this be same week or next?
It'll be on April 25th, so not same week. Thank you. Next up is 2018-1, and it's I-35W and 94 MnDOT funds for transit. Madam Harrington.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is a very big project that we're partnering with MnDOT on, and today with me is Kristen Thompson, our Assistant Director of Service Development, and David Hansen, who is our Assistant Director of Field Operations, to provide a little bit of background on the scope of this reconstruction of 35W at 94 and some of the efforts that we're putting forth to help mitigate the traffic congestion and encourage people to come to transit. So I'll let them present, and then I'll come back to the business item.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Both Chris and I are very pleased here this afternoon to give you an update on the 35W at 94 project, as well as to share with you Metro Transit's operational and mitigation plans as we transition from stage 1 to stage 2. So we're all familiar with the 35W corridor. It stretches from I-94 down 43rd Street. Phase 1 began last summer, 2017, and it is with a scheduled completion of fall of 2021. This, of course, is a very heavily traveled corridor with over 500 bus trips daily, impacting well over 14,000 transit customers a day as well. Of course, we have partnered with MnDOT, Hennepin County, and the city of Minneapolis to ensure smooth operations during this project. Some of our improvements include, of course, extended bin-pass lanes, both northbound and southbound, stretching from 46th Street to 26th Street. Our orange line elements include a fully accessible 2-level transit station at 35W and Lake Street, where we can expect to experience an improved 7-minute travel time from the Lake Street station to downtown via a transit-only 12th Street ramp and a contour lane that will connect 35W to downtown from our 3 corridors. This is a busy slide. It's really to help us to understand the major transit impacts and the stages that where they may overlap. Of course, Franklin Avenue Bridge is currently under construction, and that's scheduled to be completed prior to the start of stage 2. And of course, that requires a Route 2 to be on detour. The 26th Street Bridge will follow the opening of the Franklin Avenue Bridge beginning at stage 1. Of course, that will require the Route 11, 27, 39 to go on detour. The 38th Street Bridge is currently under construction, and that's scheduled for completion of August of this summer, 2018. And that, of course, will impact our routes 23 and Route 133. Currently, the 11th Street ramp is currently closed, and that is scheduled to be open prior to the beginning of stage 2, and that impacts our double overs and our pull-out routes to downtown Minneapolis. Our 12th Street ramp on the southbound 35W, beginning in April, will have some lane restrictions that will be in effect up until the beginning of stage 2. We have been successful in negotiating with our partners to make this an HOV and bus-only lane Monday through Friday during our PM peak hours of operation. And then the 35th and 36th ramp closures that will be occurring in stage 2, of course, that will have an impact on our Nicollet Garage operations for pullouts and pull-ins, and they will be routed via Lindale Park in Portland to the UFM consecutively there. Then, of course, the major impact, of course, is the trunk Highway 65 that'll have the greatest closure on our operations. That begins June 8th of 2018. And that lasts for approximately 120 days. And if you take a look at this visual here, the picture in the upper right is a picture of what's currently going on with the Franklin Avenue Bridge. And then the picture to the lower left gives us a visual of what the trunk Highway 65 is. That is the stretch of freeway from downtown onto I-35W. As you're going northbound, it includes the exits to westbound flyover ramp to westbound 94, Grant Street, 11th Street, and 5th Avenue. And then southbound on 35W includes the entrances from 4th Avenue, south 10th Street, 12th Street, and of course from eastbound 94 on the southbound 35W. So it's quite an area of impact there. During stage 2, what we've done is we've taken our commuter and express routes and distributed between Park and Portland for peak direction operation and on 1st Avenue and Blaisdell for all-day and reverse commute service. Some of the transit advantages included, of course, are the entrance and exit off and on to 31st to and from 35W is emergency vehicle and transit vehicle only. Buses will operate in transit-only lanes in the outer left lanes on both Park and Portland. We have a queue jump that will be installed on southbound Portland at Lake, and that will give buses the priority so that they are able to position themselves for the right turn onto 31st and onto southbound 35W in the PM operations. First and Blaisdell will operate in general traffic and will serve the bus stops at Lake Street for connection to local urban routes 21 and Route 53. We'll install a temporary southbound bus stop on Marquette near 12th Street for those commuters that would normally be served by the bus stop on 12th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue South. In addition to that, we worked with the city to add an additional left turn lane from westbound Grant onto southbound LaSalle to accommodate for the anticipated heavier traffic and additional bus movements through that intersection. So that's our operational plans. I'll turn it over to Kristen now, who will go over our mitigation plans for the upcoming stage 2.
Thanks, Dave. So we've been planning for this project for a long time, and we really have kind of 3 components to this mitigation plan. The first is really our first priority, which is to invest in the reliability of our current existing service and protect our existing customers. This includes both local and commuter route customers, so we have invested in additional scheduled travel time where it's needed, as well as additional non-revenue time, so the trips to and from the garage. And where required by this extra time, we're adding extra scheduled buses into the cycle of various routes, as well as standby buses that will be dedicated to this corridor. So, for example, as Dave mentioned, Route 2 has been on detour since the Franklin Avenue Bridge closed. And we added travel time to the schedule for all trips and an extra bus into the cycle all day to make sure that we could continue to maintain reliability. On the 35W commuter routes, we'll be adding extra travel time on that segment between downtown and their first time point out in the communities. I don't want to discount Metro Blue Line as an option during this time. We think this is going to be really attractive for commuters who are looking for a reliable service coming up from the South Metro. A lot of people ride the Blue Line today, and there's still room for more, and so we haven't made any changes to this service, but it's going to be an option that really sells itself for reliability. Once we started looking past the reliability piece into what we could do to really bring more people to transit during this time, we were thinking about what we could do to put our best foot forward with this project and really make transit useful for more people so they would consider it as an option. So we have put together a major service expansion for commuter and express routes in this corridor. On 10 of our commuter routes, we're adding new trips at the beginning and ends of the rush hour so that riders on those routes will be able to arrive at work before 6 or as late as 9 a.m. and then leave work as early as 3 or as late as 6 p.m. So on some routes, this is quite a significant expansion of the span of the service offering. On most of these routes, we have capacity during the peak of the peak period, so we took this strategy to expand the span of service instead. Route 535 is really the centerpiece of this service expansion. It is the predecessor route for the Orange Line service that will eventually result from out of all this construction. And so we really wanted to focus our resources on Route 535 and build excitement and bring ridership to that service. So we've expanded the frequency on weekdays to have service every 10 minutes in the peak periods and every 15 minutes off peak, where it's 30 minutes today. On the weekends, we'll be introducing a new service that's every 30 minutes, both Saturday and Sunday, between the South Bloomington Transit Center and downtown Minneapolis. We think summer is a great time to introduce this service because there's so many events and activities happening in downtown Minneapolis that this will provide people an option to get downtown without getting in their cars. To support the service expansion, we inventoried our park and ride spaces, so I wanted to share some of the highlights from there. We have about 1,500 park and ride spaces available in the service area that's shown here. Some highlights are that the Blue Line has about 900 spaces available between the two park and rides at Fort Snelling and at 28th Avenue. And then we also have about 350 spaces available at the Knox Avenue Park and Ride, which is in the corner of 35W and 494. That park and ride is served by Route 535, which has the major service expansion, so that's a good link where we have additional capacity available. Just for your reference, that area in the pink on the map is MBTA's service territory, and they are developing their own plans for service during this time period, which I don't have the full details on, but they have more information available on their website. This project, of course, is going to have some major impacts, so we're trying to bring as many people as possible to non-single occupancy vehicle alternatives. So together with the project partners and the TMOs in the region, we're encouraging really a whole suite of alternatives here. Through our service expansion, folks can flex their schedules with earlier or later trips. In addition to driving and park and riding at our locations, we want to encourage people to use local routes to connect to their commuter or express routes or to the Blue Line. Of course, carpooling, van pooling, teleworking, bicycling, and walking are all going to be options as well that get people out of their cars and still moving during this extremely busy and congested period. There's a very robust communication plan for this project as a whole, so I'm going to focus on the Metro Transit piece of it. First of all, we have a project website that's now live and is being continuously updated as we receive new information. So we're going to be referring folks back to this website quite a bit to get updated information throughout the project. We're also encouraging our riders to sign up for our rider alert subscription services that are specific to their route so they can get up-to-the-minute information that's tailored to their service and so they can know what's going on. We've developed buck slips and business cards you see here on the graphic, and there are some available as handouts that can be distributed at Metro Transit, at events that Metro Transit staff are attending around the region wherever it's appropriate, including commuter fairs and transit fairs. I heard today that we have something like 90 of these scheduled before June 9th, where we're going to have folks from our TIC trip planning assistants out there helping customers identify the service that's going to work for them. We're in the process of filling a 2-year temporary employer outreach FTE that will do work with employers in South Minneapolis. It's not covered by current TMO arrangements. And then our marketing campaign will really kick off in mid-May when we think it's going to be hitting home to people that they're going to need to look for other options during this project. So we'll have some efforts that are tailored to existing riders, emails out to our go-to card holders and through our customer newsletter. Also for new riders, we're reaching out through sort of geographically tailored channels, so neighborhood print ads, bus shelter ads, ads in the downtown skyways, even a couple of billboards, as well as business and residential outreach that's being led by Minneapolis and MnDOT. As part of this, we'll be doing some customer outreach on Mark II, where it's easy to catch people as they're waiting for their bus to ride home. Lastly, there is a construction hotline and email address that's staffed by the project consultant, and so they have instructions on how to either address transit issues on the spot or relay them to us so that we can handle them appropriately. As you might expect, we're going to be monitoring this service very closely. Day-to-day service management will be taken care of by our Transit Control Center and street operations. We're also going to be using operational analytics in a new way to be tracking ridership, travel time, and reliability closely, identify any potential delay hotspots so that we can work with MnDOT and our project partners to improve things for transit so we can keep transit as the mode of choice. As the project progresses, we'll be making service adjustments either to match ridership trends or to coordinate with future construction phases. For example, again, the Route 2 on Franklin Avenue, when the bridge reopens, we'll be changing the service back to cross the bridge and take out that extra time that we had added. So we're being flexible as much as we can to match up with the project timeline. With that, I think Dave and I would both be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Are there questions from committee members? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, so of the $3 million, 1.1 to MVTA, 1.9 to Metro Transit, how was that determined, or was it based off of ridership or anticipated costs, or just curious?
Madam Chair, committee member, we estimated the relative amount of service that we're going to be able to provide during this period of time. And so this was an estimated number that we came up with that we thought was equitable between the two agencies.
One more question.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it said it's renewable in 2020. So is that renewable with new funding, or is it just an extension of the?
Madam Chair, Council Member, the agreement is renewable from MnDOT with their existing funding source. So at that time, at the end of state fiscal year 2019, next calendar year, we will be able to renew it with MnDOT funding sources.
Great, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Councilmember, I'm sorry, Director Thompson.
Then we have a quorum. If the committee would like, we can invite MVTA back and they can give an update on what their services they will be added. They're still finalizing it, but it's in the same realm of trying to guarantee service. They're adding some new routes from Egan connecting to Blue Line. They're contemplating and looking at their parking rides, but their plan wasn't fully set yet, but they'd be happy to come and present their similar service once it's refined and detailed.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
And I agree. I just have a brief comment. I'm super excited about the Orange Line. It's too bad Councilmember Latowski's not here. I know she's really excited about it as well. And then I just want to recognize MnDOT. I think it's great that they are financially supporting this and recognizing that the more folks that use transit, the more efficient it is for everyone on their roadway system. So,
Madam Chair, if I might, just echoing that, we've had a really great partnership with MnDOT in developing how we might respond to the construction that needs to happen and how we can attract customers to transit. They've been very supportive, whether it be a number of the transit advantages that David mentioned, in addition to supporting the overall service increase. So we're very happy with how this has all come about so far.
very good. And then just one other thing. I'm very excited and encouraged that we will get more transit riders out of this because of what's happening with North Star, because of the construction on I-94. And I keep having to confirm this with General Manager Lamb that we're up 16%. Is that right? Okay, got it right. All right, very good. Thank you so much for the presentation.
I think we're fine because we don't need an action today, but the action is to execute an agreement with MnDOT and then to develop an agreement with Minnesota Valley so that they can have the additional $1.1 million.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And again, because this is time sensitive, we'll be bringing it to the full council without recommendation on April 25th. Next up is the 2018-80 budget amendment for the first quarter.
Good afternoon, Chair Committee members, Ed Petrie, Metro Transit Finance.
And Heather Augustin-Hebner, MTS Finance.
As you stated, we're here to do the first quarter capital and operating budget amendment. I will go through, well, first of all, we'll go through the capital portion. I have a portion. Heather will talk about the capital. We'll take questions, then we'll move on to the operating portion this evening. First of all, the capital changes you have attached with the business item. You have attachment number 1, which is a summary of all the capital budget changes, and then attachment number 3, which I always talk about, is the real large page that basically talks about the respective projects, the current authorization, what we're proposing, and then what the final authorization would be pending council approval. With the items this evening for Metro Transit, I will go through the major portions of the changes, and for the Metro Transit, the major portions of the changes are with the increased authority funding. There's a handful of projects that are some of the major projects. First of all, it's with Southwest Light Rail Transit, where the amendment would recognize $2.7 million in Hennepin County funding and $3.4 million in HICRA funding. This is the result of the change with the 2017 change with CTIB. The funding now is going over to Hennepin County. We have another project for building and energy enhancements, recognizing $800,000 of federal and $200,000 of RTC. This is so we can continue the 2018 energy conservation projects. We have another major project, $2.8 million in motor vehicle sales tax that we're recognizing for the Metro Blue Line option note payable. If you recall, a couple years ago, CTIB gave Metro Transit or gave the Metropolitan Council a $14 million interest-free note payable so we can purchase 5 option vehicles for the Blue Line. It's payable in 5 installments. This would set up the third payment, the third installment payment. The amendment would recognize $1.1 million of motor vehicle sales tax for support facilities, engineering, and capital improvements for additional work on our support facility improvements. On the D line, we're recognizing $2.1 million of federal and $530,000 of RTC for engineering on the D line stations and for staff time. And another major project is for IS capital upgrades and enhancements, $785,000 in RTC funding for IS storage, some work on LRT video and SCADA systems for both the Blue Line and the Green Line. Overall, for the Metro Transit portion of the capital amendment, it would increase our 2018 authorized capital program by $14.8 million and the multi-year by $15.7 million. With that, Chair and committee members, I would stand for any questions on the Metro Transit portion of the capital before we move on to Heather.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from committee members? Nope. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, on the MTS side, we are not requesting an increase to our capital budget, but there are a few moving pieces we just wanted to give you an update on. The first is we are closing 5 projects, and unspent funds will be used on future projects currently programmed in the CIP. And we also have a number of administrative adjustments. These include council small bus buys, some technology for small buses, replacing real-time signs along the Metro Red Line, and some suburban transit provider projects. Suburban provider projects of note is we are reallocating $529,000 from Southwest Transit's undesignated account to specific projects. These include debt payments for Southwest Village and Eden Prairie Garage, and they're also doing some improvements on their bus wash. And we are also reallocating nearly $2.5 million from MBTA's undesignated account to specific projects. These include debt payments on the Egan Bus Garage, bus stop amenities, and their computer automated dispatch, automatic vehicle locator technology. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have on the MTS capital program.
Are there any questions? I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move forward now into operating. On the operating portion, we both have a piece for that. On the Metro Transit portion, the budget amendment would recognize an increase in revenues of $1.9 million and a decrease in expenses of $8 million for a net change in our reserves, positive change of $9.9 million. The first item is on the expense change. It would recognize a permanent adjustment to the Metro Transit base operations budget, or a reduction in our expenses of $8 million, which is primarily due to 2 factors. Some of our sustainable cost savings, we're able to continue those moving forward. The biggest piece, though, is the fully funding of the council's retirement liability. If you recall, we had a major retirement liability. We've been working over many years to fully fund that. That is fully funded, so now we are able to recognize those savings moving forward. We're very happy about that. And that's also one of the things, too. Every year, we as the council, we go ahead and we issue bonds from RTC bonding, and then we have ratings from the bond rating agencies. And in fact, this Thursday, we actually have a rating call with 2 of the agencies. This is one of the things that has helped the council sustain its AAA bond rating is the fully funding of the retirement liability. So we're very proud of that. The other item on the Metro Transit, or one of the other items, is recognizing $1.9 million of funding from MnDOT that Mr. Harrington talked about. We'd recognize that portion of the revenue. And then the final item on the Metro Transit portion of the budget is an IS position, an application developer. We had originally budgeted this in the Metro Transit budget. It's actually going to be overseen by IS department, so we're actually taking that position, transferring it over to IS, and they will then allocate the costs back. So it's a zero sum for Metro Transit. So with that, Madam Chair, committee members, I would answer any questions on the Metro Transit portion of the operating budget.
Are there questions? Go ahead, Heather.
Okay, and on the MTS side, we have a companion operating budget request to the Metro Transit one. Metro Transit is requesting to bring in $1.9 million from MnDOT. We are requesting to bring in $1.1 million from MnDOT with the intention to pass that through to MBTA, and that will be contingent on approval of business item 2018-81. That I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, yeah, I think we're okay. Thank you. I do want to compliment Metro Transit for continuing to find savings and building up reserves in anticipation of facing that fiscal cliff in the next biennium. So, good work. Thank you. Um, again, this will be advanced without recommendation to April 25th. And next up is the 2018-87 Metro Blue Line Extension Capital Grant Agreements with Hennepin County. Mary Sue Abel's here.
Get my cheaters on.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Mary Sue Abel. I'm the Deputy Project Director of the Blue Line Extension Light Rail Project. I'm here today to seek your approval to authorize the Regional Administrator to negotiate and execute 2 amendments. The first amendment is Amendment number 2 to our 2017 Capital Grant Agreement with CTIB, as has been assigned to Hennepin County now. And the second amendment is Amendment number 1 to our Cooperative Funding Agreement for Engineering Phase with Hennepin County Regional Rail. So on March 2nd, 2017, we did execute the 2017 Capital Grant Agreement with CTIB, as has been assigned to Hennepin County, like I mentioned. And the grant activity period for the original grant prior to Amendment 1 was through December 31st, 2017. We do have signed Amendment 1 extending that grant activity period to April 30th. The council approved that on December 13th of 2017. And the matching funds for that grant do come from the CFA with HICRA, which was executed on March 15th, 2017. The HICRA activity period is from April 1st, 2017 to April 30th, 2018. So currently with Amendment 1 to CTIB and the original CFA with HICRA, they both are set to expire now on April 30th of 2018. So these amendments will move the grant activity period out to September 30th, 2018. And the need for this is project schedule has moved and delayed some of the project activities into Q3. There's no new dollars. The dollars that are in those original grants is sufficient for this activity. So this is just an extension of the grants for both of those. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Are there any questions from committee members? I think we're good. Thank you.
Thanks.
So that will be forwarded to the council, full council on April 25th. And we have one information item. It's East 7th Street, limited stop, Route 54 extension, and Adams back to present.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. I'm excited to talk about this project. We hear from our customers time and again that they enjoy speed and reliability in our service. And one way to do that is the solution that we found in A-Line and our strategy for ABRT. And through this project, we're actually able to employ some of that because this project is actually one of the original alignments from the 2010 arterial bus rapid transit study. And this new route extension will be implemented on June 9th of this year, and we'll be using CMAQ funds to help support that operation. The new service is going to be operating every 20 minutes in the midday all the way up to Maplewood Mall. And 20-minute peak and 30-minute off-peak all the way up to Maplewood Mall. Will be extending the West 7th portion of Route 54 through East 7th, up Arcade, east on Maryland, up White Bear Avenue to Maplewood Mall, where a number of local transit connections are made. There's some market crossover between a number of routes that you see on this map, the 74, the 61, the 64. This is going to be a new fast and direct route connecting the east side of St. Paul to Maplewood and downtown, but also to the Mall of America and the airport. One of the keys to making this an attractive service is making it a faster travel time. So I mentioned already a bus stop. Bus stop spacing on here is wider than you would see in a local bus route. We are providing new shelters at many locations. We're hoping to get new shelters at all the stops. And we're in development with Transit Signal Priority and seeing how we might be able to apply this technology to the east side of St. Paul as well. So I mentioned it's a one-seat ride from the Mall of America all the way up to Maplewood Mall. And just by nature of eliminating that transfer connection, riders could save up to 10 or more minutes on their trip down to the Mall of America or the airport from the east side of St. Paul, let alone getting to downtown St. Paul faster. So we're very happy about that and making the connection with all of the services that occur through downtown St. Paul. It was one of the projects that was ranked high in our service improvement plan, which you hopefully heard about before, of all of our bus improvement projects, and so we're excited to implement this part of it. This map shows the St. Paul region, and the shaded area are areas of concentrated poverty, and so this route serves well those communities and again connects to multiple services throughout the region by making that connection in downtown St. Paul. And as far as ridership goes, the Route 54 today that operates between the Mall of America and downtown St. Paul carries about 4,200 rides a day. And we expect that this route with this new extension will get well beyond 6,500 rides a day as this market develops over time. So we're really hopeful about the strength of this market. Lastly, kind of the dollars and cents that come along with it. Again, we have a CMAQ grant that is providing us operating dollars over the course of 3 years, as well as buses that we have already taken delivery of and prepares us for this service plan. Metro Transit is covering the local match for these federal funds. And then lastly, the timeline. Starting back when we were awarded the CMAQ federal funds in 2015 to June 9th in 2018, we've received the buses. We've got some construction work that we've been working with our partner agencies on to complete, and assuming that the snow doesn't prevent us further from starting these projects, we'll be in fine form for our new service on June 9th. And so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions or comments? Councilmember Elkins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this reasonably close to the future Rush Line corridor?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, the Route 54 extension was one of the options that was studied as part of Rush Line, but it's really a bit further east. White Bear is much farther east than the Rush Line corridor, which is running a little bit closer to 35E on the Bruce Vento Trail.
Very good. Any other questions? It's too bad Councilmember Commerce isn't here because I know he is very excited about this, and I am as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our agenda. Is there anything else from council members? Otherwise, we can be adjourned in record time.
This committee, I think it is.
We can blame our colleagues for dragging us down another meeting.